All right.
So let's hear from our Canon for Finance and Administration as she tells us the gripping story about the 2024 Parochial Report completion. Take it away, Jessica. This is being recorded in case you want to watch it again.
Which I know you all will, because it's so exciting. So for those of you that haven't seen the emails coming out about the Parochial Report, the 2024 Parochial Report, the Parochial Report is the responsibility of the House of Deputies subcommittee on the state of the church. So the Parochial Report is tasked by General Convention to the Committee on the State of the Church. In 2023, and I think partly in 2022, but don't quote me on that, the Committee on the State of the Church created a subcommittee that basically revamped the entire Parochial Report. So they took the Parochial Report down to bare bones and they built it from scratch from there. They had two different sides to this subcommittee. One made up of Episcopalians and things like that to do the data side of it, and then they actually consulted with the finance people to revamp the financial side of the Parochial Report. So they completely redesigned this Parochial Report. I do apologize, I'm fighting a tiny cold. So the Parochial Report was taken down to the bare bones and essentially redesigned. And it is a report from the Episcopal Church. So although we don't get direct influence into how it is, what goes into it, things like that, there were surveys and stuff like that done. So a few changes that you will see, and we will go through the Parochial Report itself, but just some overview before I start sharing my screen. They have integrated the online parish register to the Parochial Report. So if your congregation has signed up for the online parish register, you can directly download that information into your Parochial Report and it'll pull that information. If you are interested in the online parish register, let me know after this meeting and I can get you the information for that. So if you have that, you can connect your Parochial Report to that, and so that just makes filing portions of your Parochial Report that much more easy. They have also integrated with the church pension group side. So if you have clergy and or staffing and you are putting them into the church pension group side, they will also pull that information for you. So you no longer have to fill out the clergy portion of the side of the report. They will pull that information from CPG. Now, with that being said, that means that the information on the CPG side does have to be current and correct. And so again, if you need help with doing that side of it or need me to help you with that, I'm more than happy to do that. So what they've tried to do is take all of these different areas that we historically have provided the information that they then again asked for in the Parochial Report. They're trying to integrate the systems, and so you no longer have to fill out the information more than hopefully 1 or 2 times, instead of every single time the Episcopal Church asks you for something and you've already provided it to the Episcopal Church 17 different ways. And so that is super helpful. They have removed the workbook as a separate document. So when you go through the Parochial Report now, it's kind of like a walking tutorial of how to fill it out. So you no longer have to toggle back and forth between the 2 different things or have it printed out and look at it. It kind of just walks you through it. They have expanded some of the questions to be more open to grasping and collecting data as far as what your church is doing for service and outreach. And also they've integrated ways into collecting data for hybrid and virtual meetings. So what they're trying to do and what they tried to do was set it up so that the Parochial Report was collecting data in a big picture kind of way instead of just in a very snapshotty way, and no longer focusing solely on ASA for the health of the congregation or the finances being solely the way that we look at that. And the open-ended questions are now, you can decide to answer them or you don't have to. They're no longer mandatory. So if you want to provide that information, you're more than happy to, but it will no longer be required. And so if your church doesn't want to answer those questions, it will prevent you from being able to file your parochial report. And the greatest news of all of this, and I will show you when we open this, is the parochial report is significantly shorter and easier and faster to fill out than it has been in a very long time. So, are there any questions about any of that? Okay. So,
I have a question.
Yeah, just kidding.
The parish register app, you still have to fill out the book?
I am like 90% in my answer, but because it's been a long 2 weeks and I have not looked into that in a minute, let me just double check my answer and get back to you.
Okay.
I'm almost positive that you don't have to, but I'm gonna double check my answer because I don't necessarily trust my day after New Year's Eve day and Christmas brain. So I will get back to you. Okay. So this is your parochial report side. Now, when you all log in, you typically don't have these options that I do, but we're going to walk you through them. The parochial report does not go live until January 6th. So I can only walk you through certain things right now because even my side isn't live yet. It opens January 6th. The deadline to file is March 1st. I have until May 1st to mark the reports complete. So it is still a dual process. The diocese still does need to go in and mark them complete. And then they are going to close the system on May 2nd. So please get your parochial reports filed before then. About early April, end of March, early April, I will start to send out more aggressive, hey, are we going to do this notices? Because essentially once the parochial report is closed, once they close this out of the system, even I don't have the ability to go in and do it. And so then we have to fax it to them or send it to them and things like that. So really try to get your parochial reports in by that March 1st deadline or in the month of March at the absolute latest so that we can get them marked complete. So we're going to select, I'm just going to select Atlantic cities because it's the first one. This first page stays generally the same. So you're going to want to double check your information. This will be filled out for you and we'll have the information. And so just double check. You can click the little edit button if something in there is incorrect. The certification page does look very similar to how it has in the past. One question that we get very often is this certified by the rector, vicar, or person in charge. If your church does not have a lead clergy person, it can be signed by the senior warden, and you'll just need to check the box that you don't have a clergy person in charge of your church. If you have a supply priest, if you use supply priests or things like that, please do not have them sign it. Please have the senior warden sign it. And then you need the vestry approval. That is one of the things that has been questioned in the past is, yes, your parochial report does have to be approved by the vestry prior to it being marked complete. So if this does not get filled out or is incorrect, or if the date that the vestry approved it is after the date that the people certifying it, or something like that, I will go back and open it back up for you guys to get it. That is a canonical requirement that it has to be approved by the vestry. And then it's going to ask you the number of people that participated in the completion of the report. So pretty standard questions there. This is where it gets a little bit more. So If you have your parish register, this is where you're going to click so that the parish register will come in. They're going to ask you for average Sunday attendance, average Sunday attendance online, average weekly attendance. So if your church, like Bobby, for instance, Bobby has a weekly Zoom service, so you would have the average attendance online in that weekday services. And so those are actually being captured now. The estimate number of people of unique non-live views, outreach, average volunteers that are not members, and the total impact. And that's going to auto-populate through those things. And again, kind of walking you through, in the blue is where they're describing. So the blue is where they've integrated that workbook. They're also going to get communicants in good standing, total active members. They've also tried to clean up the language to make it clearer, or what does an active member mean, and active participants. So they've tried to clean up and make that a little clearer for people when filling it out. Total Easter services and total Christmas Eve. And that's it. This page is, they are trying to capture which is how many congregations still have full-time staff, full-time clergy. Are they lay-led? What is the lay involvement in the leadership of the church and stuff like that? So this page is a newer page and kind of a revamp of the older pages. So they're going to ask you about who leads your primary worship services and kind of what is your congregation, how is it led?
I have a question.
Yep.
On that section, if staff is like secretarial, that sort of thing, not the people that run the worship committee or the people that run the thrift shop or that kind of thing?
So that's actually, it is unpaid staff, and it may include, but is not limited to, nursery workers, Sunday school facilitators, parish administrators, lay preachers, those types of things. So it does include those things, yes.
So it does include the people that volunteer at the thrift shop or the people that do the worship committee and print program and that kind of thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I just was having that conversation a moment ago. Thank you.
Yep, no worries. It has streamlined the answers of the questions to baptisms, confirmation, reception. You're going to select all the different types of services and all the different types of things that you have. The languages. And then the two new questions is the percentage of congregation that is white, Caucasian, or of European descent, and what you think the average age in your congregation is. It is my understanding that when these two go live, and again, it is not live, but these are not mandatory questions. So if you don't know the answers and you don't want to guess, you don't have to answer them. You can just move through it. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Then we go through the financial. Kind of similar to before, where you're going to have the number of pledges, but again, in the blue is now where they've integrated the workbook. And they've also included some examples. So if you have questions like about that, they've included those. So they're going through the revenues, giving you a description of each, and kind of then you'll plot those into there. expenses. They've broken the expenses. They've done it down to 2 categories now. And then they want to know what is the balance in your cash, checking, and savings account. So again, they've simplified the financial page to kind of capture those things. They do have some questions on additional financial information. Again, these are yes or no questions. Do you have any, does your congregation have an endowment or other investment accounts? And then it's going to kind of walk you through what that looks like. Do you have any outstanding debt? All of the churches should answer no to this in Wyoming. As far as I know, we do not have any churches that have any outstanding debt. So your answer is no. Does your congregation own buildings or land? The answer is yes. None of our churches are rented to my knowledge. And then they want to know if you rent a portion of your buildings to groups outside of your congregation. So if your soup kitchen is run by your congregation and is not a separate 501c3, even though it might be have its own checking account or something like that, and they give you money for that, that is not an organization outside, that is not a group outside of your organization. But if you rent to, Bobby, I don't even know if this is a thing, but you're at the top of my screen. If Rollins Food Pantry rents your kitchen once a month to provide food, then that is a rental to an outside organization. And so outside of your congregation are people paying you rent for the goods and services for the use of your building. There are 3 narrative questions. One is a mandate of General Convention. One is to help them recognize the work at the church. And then this one is new, where they're asking for accomplishments and for goals that you have for the future, or that you have that you've already done. And this is to kind of try to grasp some of those things. One of the things that they heard in the narrative comments is that
reducing your carbon footprint. Are there examples of what kinds of things that might be?
not to my knowledge, but again, it's not open yet.
I guess we'd say we quit using styrofoam cups and we just use regular coffee cups, that kind of stuff. I mean,
yeah, that kind of stuff. Yep.
Okay.
And then that is it. That is the parochial report for 2024 into 2025.
And
so
are you going to have this recorded so people who couldn't attend can look at it later?
Yep. And it will go live on January 6th. And so you'll be able to go in and start filling out your own. And as you guys are filling out your broker reports and things like that, if you have questions and things like that, please just reach out, and we can get you through that. But it has been streamlined. They've tried to integrate it and make it a little bit easier and a little bit more user friendly, and also not as time consuming.
Jessica, can I ask a question about the red parish register book again? Are you aware if they've had conversations about modifying that to be more easily integrated with the parochial report? Because some of those columns are not easily translatable into the parochial report. It would be handier if we were tracking that throughout the year, including things like how many people did your soup kitchen serve? How many people, if we had a place to keep track of those mission and outreach things, it would be lots easier.
It's my understanding that they're working towards that, and that there will be modifications made, but I don't know exactly. I can't speak to how far down the road those conversations are or how upfront those conversations are, but I do know that there are plans to continue to try to integrate the online parish register into the parochial report, so that that information can be tracked, but I don't know exactly how far down the road that is. That was pretty much all I had, unless people have questions. It's like I said, they streamlined it a ton. They tried to make it way more user friendly. They integrated the workbook into it. They've condensed the questions. They've provided clarification on some of those more difficult things, like what institutes outside of your organization, what is a member in good standing, what does that mean? And tried to streamline it as much as possible. It is a living document, and so there possibly could be changes that come out from this year, things that they learned that worked, that didn't work, and things like that. So it may look a little bit different when filing for 2025 as well. But hopefully this is a pretty good start to at least making it a little bit more user-friendly and updating it to actually capture the nature of where we are in church now compared to, say, 20 to 25 years ago. So the integration of the online, the week services, and things like that to really get a picture of what your community is doing.
Could you go back, Jessica, and talk again briefly about everybody now that's included on that staff, volunteer, non-staff, clergy, those questions that Martha had about volunteers?
I can. The workbook portion of it is not live yet, and so it will go into so this question helps us understand how many individuals undertake work on behalf of the church, recognizing in particular the contributions of lay staff, paid or unpaid. Unpaid lay staff may include, but is not limited to, nursery workers, Sunday school facilitators, parish administrators, lay preachers.
And then you assume that also means thrift shop workers, if your church operates a thrift shop, or if your church operates a food bank.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, so like the pantry.
Like the food pantry.
So does that also include the people within the church that like set up the worship schedule and that type of thing? I mean, it's all sort of the good of the church.
I would say if it would, how do I explain? So I'm going to say, and we'll see if the workbook agrees with my statements, is if it would be something that somebody in the church could be paid for. So if you had a paid administrator, would that be a responsibility of that paid ministry? Or would it be something that could possibly be paid for as a position in the church, but is not? So for instance, a thrift store worker could potentially get paid, but you also might have volunteers. So that could be an unpaid lay position. A soup kitchen, the same thing. You typically would pay a parish administrator to create bulletins, fold the bulletins, do the weekly newsletter, those types of things. That would be the lay preaching and stuff like that is because typically that would be a paid responsibility in some contexts, not generally in Wyoming still, of a clergy person or something like that. So kind of using that as a guideline. Worship leaders and planning the worship services would be, yes. I would say probably altar guild, setting up the altar and those types of things would not, because that typically and historically has not been a paid position within the church that is now not funded for budgetary restraints or things like that. So kind of using that as a guideline of what unpaid staff, what unpaid or non-stipendiary lay staff would be.
So
if you had the means to pay for it, would you be able to pay for that position, or is it a voluntary thing?
But a worship leader, you're saying theoretically could be paid, again, not typically in Wyoming, but a licensed Eucharistic minister or a lay Eucharistic minister
would not
be.
So only a worship leader if they're like planning the services.
Okay, if they are like you don't have a clergy person and that person is.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jessica, this is Martha. So would Bonnie, do I count Bonnie?
Well, Bonnie would be counted as a part-time clergy.
Okay.
Because she's paid and interim.
Okay.
Yeah. So they've also taken out the different where before you kind of had to like list all of your clergy people, and then you had to list like what they were and all of that. They've taken all of that out as well. And so now it's just, do you have a full-time clergy person? Do you have a part-time clergy person? And those are paid. So those first two are paid. Do you have non-stipendiary clergy? And then it's going to total that, and then it's going to ask you, of those clergy, how many are deacons, how many are priests? So if you have a deacon in your church, that's going to go under non-stipendiary clergy. If you have a non-stipendiary locally formed priest and a deacon in your church, you're going to have two non-stipendiary clergy.
Okay, so this is Martha again. So and this is our report for 2024. So
Correct.
We do show deacon because we did have a deacon for part of the year.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And for this question, what they're trying to capture with this question is the shift in movement of paid clergy versus non-paid clergy, and then how much of those responsibilities are being picked up by lay, either lay being paid or lay being unpaid. And so they're just trying to gauge and get a snapshot of kind of the movement in the church, and also recognizing the contribution that the lay are making into the church, either unpaid or paid.
Jessica, do all of the missional clergy, regional clergy count as full-time paid clergy?
No, because they are paid by the diocese, so they are not. And this is.
Oh, that's right. Those are, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so this is your church context. So if you have a missional clergy from the diocese, you don't have clergy in your church because that's a diocesan position.
Except that hasn't how we've been putting it, because they've been counting as the priest in charge, designated to serve that church.
Correct, but again, we're changing the question. It's not the same question.
Okay. So Jenny won't be listed in Wheatland now as nobody will be listed, but her count will be a what for that church? What does Wheatland put, as I'm looking at Jill and Valjean there?
So they would put a deacon. They would have one deacon. Because we're going to pick up the missional clergy on the diocesan side.
Okay,
Mhm.
I just know we'll all have those questions, so.
Yeah.
The teaching, and
Yep. So the missional clergy and the regional priests that the diocese pays for will be picked up on the diocesan from the CPG side for how, because we list who they're serving and those types of things. Yep. Any other questions?
Jessica, this is Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Hey, did you see my question
No, ma'am.
in the chat?
Yep, that is rent.
That is rent.
That is,
Perfect.
yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yep. Good job. And again, as you have questions through this, text me, email me, give me a call. Because it does look a little different and they are capturing it a little differently. So if there are questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
cool. Thanks, Jessica,
You're
for that
welcome.
gripping and yet informative presentation on parochial reports. Our next one in February will be Laura Gilbert, who will talk about the long-awaited confirmation class. And that date is February 6th, confirmation class, Laura Gilbert. So we'll get some intel out on that and see you all in February.